You're listening to a new episode of The Brave Technologist, and this one features Cahill Camden, who is the founder of Echo Jockey and Press Jockey, two advanced AI-powered platforms that help businesses quickly build brand awareness, secure media coverage, and unlock more guest podcasting opportunities. Having guided Coinberry and Blockchain Foundry from early-stage investments to eight-figure exits and working with multiple Web3 and technology companies over the past 8 years, Cahill now works selectively with fast-growing startups, helping them scale and increase their valuations. In this episode, we discussed why he thinks podcasts are the number one medium to create, know, and like and trust within your ideal client and the most promising stats in the space, the impact on the creator economy and predictions for the future of content creation, along with tough decisions creators will be forced to make when balancing privacy with the growing need for AI-driven data insights. Now for this week's episode of The Brave Technologist. Cahill, welcome to The Brave Technologist. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Luke. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I know. I've really been looking forward to this. We don't talk enough about creators at Brave, but we do have, a big part of what we're trying to do with our products, and it's kind of find new ways to help not only support creators, but help kind of empower creators with tools. And that's one of the reasons why I'm super excited to have you on today, because, you're doing some really interesting work in that field. And but just to kind of set the table, can you give us a little bit of background on like how you ended up doing what you're doing with Echo Jockey and Press Jockey, and then we can drill down a little bit more into what specifically those platforms are doing.
Yeah, right on. So I started actually with my own agency. And so my agency was focused on really three different types of marketing: earned media, owned media, and paid media. So earned being, hey, can you get PR? Can you get podcast placements, etc.? Owned media being, do you have a blog? Do you have a newsletter? What kind of content are you creating? Evergreen content on a content basis. And then paid media being obviously, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, like all the paid channels. And so my agency was really focused on this in the technology space, but almost exclusively in blockchain and Web3. And so over the years, we've helped a number of clients go from seed to acquisition or getting acquired. And I built a team out around getting earned media specifically. So I had multiple people doing this on a manual basis, manually reaching out for Press Jockey, for example, manually reaching out to journalists and reporters, manually following up, manually getting quotes and clients placed. And the same with podcasts. We would manually reach out to podcasts, manually try and find different episodes to connect with. And it was just a lot of work. So that's where this whole idea has kind of come from. Is like, I've had this problem. I know what it's like, and I want to create tools to really help our agency to get really efficient. And then I was like, hey, maybe I should just give this to the world.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, let's drill down into that a little bit. What exactly are you guys doing with Echo Jockey and Press Jockey, just so the audience can learn a little bit more?
So Echo Jockey is a tool for CEOs, founders, and leaders to get more guest podcasting. So how do you go and find podcasts to guest on? How do you pitch them? How do you start the conversation? How do you connect with those podcasters? Echo Jockey takes care of all of that. Press Jockey is more for traditional media. So if you've ever used Help a Reporter Out, Quoted, Source Bottle, these are tools where thousands of journalists will post requests for expertise that they will then use in their articles. And you may get a quote if you respond to them, or you can just pitch the journalist directly with a tool like Cision. And so Press Jockey automates all of that. It looks at those tools, it finds you the best matches for your business. And then you also have a massive database of journalists, reporters, editors that you can reach out to and pitch your story. So it's more for traditional media.
It's awesome. I mean, like, just thinking back on even our own stuff here, like how much tedious work is involved with just, even for a single person, outreach follow-ups, sourcing, fielding, drafting stuff, like all sorts of little things here. It sounds like you guys kind of created almost like a marketplace for connections to kind of happen and to kind of do that on your own with these tooling. It's awesome because so much of the narrative around AI is around, it's going to make, super powered engineering or it's going to be everywhere or whatever. But this is an actual case where startups or people that have small teams can kind of leverage these tools and cut a lot of the inefficiency out of the process and get the objective of what you need to do to find that market fit, right? Like of getting out there and getting, there's so much noise, right? Like getting out there is so important. Earned media is like so important. I can't downplay that or say that enough. I mean, but yeah, I mean, like why and another thing people might wonder too, like is, and I've seen this thrown around quite a bit, like, everybody's got a podcast or whatever, but why should somebody consider kind of being a thought leader on podcasts or in the media or kind of create their own? Do you see impact for the business from your point of view?
Like 1,000% there's impact, positive impact on your business. So there's a number of reasons, and like we can go through a huge list, but let's cut it down to the essentials. I think as we see more content get published with AI, there's going to be more of a need for personal brands and for human-to-human connection. So we can talk about that later, but I think that's one of the trends that is definitely coming. Okay, so why would you want to be on podcasts, for example? Or why would you want to have traditional media? Either one. What we're all trying to do, whether we have a product or a service, is we're trying to get people to know about us. We're trying to get people to like us. And we're trying to get people to trust us that we have a solution for their problems. If you're selling something, right? If you're not selling anything, this probably doesn't make as much sense to you. But if you're selling anything, you want people to know, like, and trust you. All right. There is, at this current point in time, I would argue to say that there is no better opportunity than podcasts to get people to know, like, and trust you. So why do I say that? Well, podcasts, you have anywhere from 30 minutes to, let's say, an hour and a half to share your stories, your insights, your case studies, talk about your product, get people to understand who you are as a founder, CEO, or leader. Okay. There's nothing else that does that. If you were to transcribe that to an article, you're talking like dozens of pages of text that no one's going to read. So you get this opportunity. On top of that, podcasts is a growing trend, whereas traditional media is a declining trend. So even though we have products in both, we are seeing that, podcast growth is happening between about 5-10% per year. Over the lockdown years, it was a little higher, but this is a growing trend that we're seeing. So you probably want to be on a growing trend. And on top of that, you also get to build trust almost right away with an audience. So you're not just creating content in your studio or in your office or at home, hoping that when you post it on LinkedIn, Facebook, or whatever platform it is, that you're going to get an audience. No, you're starting with an audience, and then you can use that content later. So really, those would be the kind of primary factors on why you'd want to actually get going on podcasts.
Yeah, and I think that, you're in a really interesting vantage point where you're seeing both the traditional side and the podcasting side, and you're servicing both too, right? So like there's like crossover potential, but I mean, like it's pretty indisputable too at this point. I mean, given, even not to get into politics, but just looking at how podcasts have impacted this political cycle, it's almost like, like back when Obama was running, it was really when you started to see Facebook and a lot of like new media hitting and affecting campaigns. But now it's like you've got these forums of podcasts where you can have like real, like long form, and it's not like interview mode that you're typically seeing with like, somebody, coming at you with combative questions, but you see a different side of these people in this podcast format. And I think, it's really interesting because there's this whole founder mode meme right now that's floating around the zeitgeist, right? I mean, like, but the podcasts are pretty much a table stakes tool, right? Like in that founders mode toolkit, I would imagine, right? Given how the founder is kind of the face of the startup, I would imagine. Well, what would you think about that? Like,
I totally agree with you. And so I think on that point, Luke, there's a couple of things, right? One, you're going to have to create content somehow. And one of the things that I often say is, do you want to create content, again, in your office, in your studio, in your home, and then post it on social and hope that you're going to get in front of an audience? Or do you want to start in front of an audience, get content, get video, get audio, then transcribe that, cut it, and post it on social and hope that you get even more of an audience reach? So that's one. And then two, to your point about not to get into politics, but let's call a spade a spade.
Right.
Joe Rogan has more coverage and more views and listeners than all of the networks combined on either side of the aisle. So when you add up everything, ABC, NBC, CNN, Fox News, all of the channels, Joe Rogan has way more than them. Not like a little, way more. And so that is very powerful. Now, of course, Joe Rogan's, the top podcaster in the world. But that's not to say that you're not going to get tremendous benefit by being on smaller niche podcasts. Of course you will. And I often say, like, imagine you can get in front of a room of 200 people, 500 people every week that were interested in your product, your service, your business, your software. Imagine you could get in front of 200 to 500 people. That's a huge number. You do that 4 times a month, you're in front of a few thousand, and then you use that content and repurpose it for social. That's absolutely huge. So I do think that podcasts is going to continue to be a growing trend.
Yeah, totally. And it's just like this way to kind of be on demand and out there. And like, it's a callback form of media too, where like something topical comes in the news and you can refer back to it too. Like I see it, like, it's amazing. Like we've seen just like we've advertised on podcasts, and then we've seen certain guests go on podcasts, and them mentioning us with the earned media side, it greatly outperforms us. Like having that, I don't know. I feel like there's like this real desire for authenticity with especially with startups and with companies. And, there's no better way to kind of show that than actually having the person in the room. And a lot of times who's either early or there or founded the company or is driving the vision, right? Like there's no better person to kind of like tell the story. Like, and I feel like so often when we do these things, you end up getting feedback where it's like, man, I didn't even realize that was a part of what the company did, right? Like, and yeah, it's so cool. I mean, what kind of what are some trends you're seeing in AI generated content that business owners should pay attention to? I know we're talking podcast and kind of the press impact, but is there anything else that you're seeing that people should be noting?
So I think first things, just one interesting stat about podcasts and traditional media. One of the things that I think is important to recognize or remember is that 85%, approximately 87%, a number around there, of people who listen to podcasts trust what they're hearing on the podcast. Wow. Because obviously the podcast host has done some form of vetting, they've done some form of research, and they've brought on a specific guest for a reason. So if you can be that guest, you are already in like the good books. You're already in that zone of having people trust you. Whereas on traditional media, last time I checked, which is a stat that was pulled from 2020, 60% of people do not trust traditional media. That is a huge difference.
It's huge.
Like, an absolutely huge
that seems
difference.
Conservative now. I mean,
right,
like,
exactly.
like 4 years later, right? Like, it's like, I've never seen anything like this before with people.
100%.
I mean, like, why do you think that is? I mean, like, not to get too personal, but that's why you're here, right? Like, what do you think is kind of causing that?
I think we're finally at a place where the internet and where transparency and where influencers and people who are insightful about media are exposing the planned nature behind media on any side. Again, this is not to be political left or right. It's just on any side. There's typically an agenda, and that agenda typically goes with where the money comes from. And if the money comes from specific places, you're typically going to have specific questions, segments, answers, hosts, guests, the whole 9 yards that talk about a specific thing or in a specific direction. Whereas podcasts, YouTube shows, regular conversations between two people, it's much more of a conversation that is free flowing and can go in multiple directions. And I feel like that has shifted things. Now, to your question before about AI, I think we're seeing a trend right now where AI is going to really amplify the amount of content that is created. Like if you thought there's a lot of content now, give it a year or two, and you're going to see a ridiculous amount of content being published by AI bots. And so we're talking faceless YouTube channels. We're talking even podcasts that are likely going to be run by AIs talking to AIs. Will the information be insightful, interesting, entertaining? Maybe. And so then you're going to have to make that decision on whether you want to, follow an AI content creator, an AI bot, an AI influencer, an AI podcast host, or whether you don't. And I think we're going to see that, and that's going to become harder to distinguish as AI gets better and better. So that's kind of one of the trends that I see.
And I think both of these things, these two questions, kind of dovetail together too, right? Because like as more media gets output to broader audiences and more often, right? Like things that didn't seem so obvious before become obvious, right? Like anybody, you were at an agency, like there are run books for having a PR plan, right? Like and a go to market, right? Like and it's like
we had all of them, yeah.
All the formulaic mechanics of it become so out there and in your face when you're seeing content from every kind of side of the spectrum. And I feel like a similar thing probably will happen with AI. I'm already seeing it like on Twitter where you're like, you start to see some replies and you're like, that's an AI reply. That's an AI reply. Even though like, it's better than what it used to be, but it's still like you see enough of it and it just kind of smells weird. Right. Like, and so it's super interesting time. Like, and it just seems like there's always going to be kind of like a human driving something to keep it authentic or put themselves out there. That's really interesting. I mean, like how do you see this impacting creators, individually? Do you think that this will require more effort on their part to kind of put themselves out there, or do you think that where do you see this going for the individual creator?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there's going to be kind of 2 or 3 tracks of what will happen. One is we're going to see a segment of the market, and I would think a significant portion of the market, who wants to have human to human connection. Right? Mm-hmm. Like they want to hear from other humans. They want to see other humans. So that's going to happen. Then you're going to have creators who kind of augment their content creation with AI and use AI to maybe increase the amount that they produce or increase the production quality. Like we're already seeing that with some YouTube channels whereby, if you were looking for B-roll footage and you were paying some of these platforms, like stock photos to get B-roll footage, now you can just ask AI to do it and it will come up with the thing that you want. Of course, it's animated, but it's pretty well animated and it changes the nature of your video. So that's 2. And then 3, we're going to see a segment of the market who they just don't care if it's a human or an AI, as long as the content is interesting, entertaining, and good. Like, sure, I'll listen to it. And I think that's kind of where we'll see the market split. For content creators, my personal feeling, maybe because I'm a little old school, is human-human connection is going to be absolutely huge. Sure, you'll be able to make money from just having your own AI bots if that's the direction you want to go. But I do think human-to-human connection is going to be increasingly more important, especially for business owners as we progress forward over the next 5 years.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's kind of the silver lining of all of this is that, it actually probably like knowing that something's real, like, will have a higher value in a market that becomes more and more saturated with, artificial, content and tools, but also like, just the ability to run through stuff and even timestamp things, like stuff that just like used to take a long time to manually do. Yeah. It's just so nice to have these tools around in any capacity. That's what just kind of is really surprising about a lot of people that have the knee-jerk reactions to things, is that there's like, damn, like this is actually like in some context super useful, even if you don't like it. It's just really interesting. And like, well, let's kind of dive into the tooling side a little bit more. I mean, like, you touched a little bit about Echo Jockey earlier, but do you have any early success stories, or are there any ways that people are using what you're doing that you're seeing kind of find fit? And how long has Echo Jockey been out there?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So I've got a ton of case studies. I have many of them. But I think ones that are most relevant, let's see. So we had one customer who he gave the tool to his virtual assistant, and she used Echo Jockey for 30, 40 minutes a day to reach out to podcasts. Now, you got to remember, Echo Jockey, for those who have not seen it or who are listening just on audio only, you've got your search ability. So we have millions of podcasts in the database, hundreds of millions of episodes. So you've got your search capability, but then you also have the ability to have generative pitches, which are custom based on your profile and based on the podcast or episode that you're pitching. So you can literally click a button and it will generate a very well written pitch that you might have to edit a tiny bit, but you don't always. So anyways, he gave this to his VA. She started sending out messages 30, 40 minutes a day. And in the last 6 months, he's booked over 42 podcasts, which is almost 2 podcasts a week.
Whoa.
And that has resulted in tens of thousands of views on his profile. His LinkedIn has spiked. He's gotten business opportunities. He's made sales from this. He's started to transition into a thought leader in his space. He's a fractional CMO, and he's just crushing it. I've got another client who he did this, got on a podcast, pushed it out on social with a bit of on LinkedIn, a bit of social, and he got 1,500 views, which resulted in 10 qualified leads coming through on one podcast. And
wow.
So that's huge. There's another person who, another customer who they had an agency. Their marketing agency never offered anything like podcast outreach before, but because they're able to leverage the tool and the automations and the AI, they can quickly use it to offer this for their clients. They added an entire new revenue stream at $1,500 to $2,000 a month per client, using the tool to get them on, anywhere from 3 to 6 podcasts a month. So
that's huge.
These huge, like absolutely huge. And I know from the agency side, because I had an agency, if you were going to do that for clients, you would hire someone, either part-time contractor or full-time. You'd be doing dozens of hours of outreach. Yes, you can make a profit from it, but it's just way, way, way more work. And now all of a sudden, this customer can use a tool to augment what they're doing and drastically increase the results that they're getting for clients.
I mean, especially like in times right now where you're seeing like a lot of cost cutting, and unfortunately, like you see like a lot of marketing departments get hit really hard in these areas. Like, and you've got a lot of people that are still at orgs that are like, how do I do more with less, right? Like, and having these capabilities is just huge. I mean, like, but even more fundamentally, like there's just the battle of the blank page, right? Like, especially when you're writing about yourself, right? Like you're just a total solve for that, which is super cool. I can't wait to take a look at this a little more closely.
Yeah, it's like
from our side too. Like,
it's like, thank you. And it's like anyone who has like thought, oh man, like how am I going to write pitches? I don't know what to say. I don't have a good bio. All of these resistance points that maybe stops you from really sharing your knowledge and your insight with targeted audience members, potential clients, potential customers who could actually use your help. Mm-hmm. And because maybe you don't know how to do it, you block yourself and you block your clients or potential clients from learning about you because you don't know how to write a bio, you don't know how to write a pitch, you don't know how to do this. And now all of a sudden the AI will do 95% of the work for you. And it's tuned by us. We spend dozens of hours tuning it from our agency life with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pitches. And so like the pitches are pretty darn good. And you don't have to really worry about it. And if you want, you can go in and tween it. You can go in and tweak it, tune it. It's my combination word.
It's all good.
You can go in and tweak it and tune it if you want, and you can make it even better, or you can make it even more your own. So that's always up to you. Right.
That's what's so cool about it. It's like, you're cooking with the ingredients that are from your own creation, right? Like it sounds like it's just looking at what you've already put out there and building based off of those ingredients. And then it, gives you a follow-on opportunity to tune it even more. Like, I think this is, I might be beating a dead horse with talking about it in this way, but I think these are the cases where like AI is super useful because people, if you look at the progression, right, like of how I personally did this because like a lot of what I was coming up was like self-taught from learning stuff online or and just practically applying it. We're in this phase where like this is even like a bigger jump start to learning new things, right? And this is an area that's like so key to a startup, right? Like how do you get yourself out there? You know you have something good, you're putting your life into it, and you need more people to know about it. And this is it seems like an awesome way to kind of get it out there. And I know I'm talking you up a lot, but I think this is just super cool because like we talk to a lot of people like from, you know, the broader academic and in different areas in the AI space, but like is always this question of like, what are the actual practical uses for this right now? And like, timing wise and like need wise and you know all these different practical things come up with what you guys are doing that I think will help. I mean, we have 1.7 million content creators that have verified with us, and I'd imagine like a good chunk of them have a need to get themselves out there a little bit more among the noise. So these tools sound like they're super interesting for them to check out.
Yeah, and thanks, Luke. And you know, to add to that point, again, you're going to be creating content anyways. Like it's not like, oh, I'm going to be on podcast or I'm going to be doing nothing. No.
Right.
You're going to be creating content regardless. And so why not create content in front of an audience, get the video, get the audio, and then do your thing and cut it, transcribe it into a blog post, transcribe it into a Medium post, Substack newsletter. Like you can go down the road and do tons of things with this content, but like create it in front of an audience first. And here's the other thing. When you're creating it in front of an audience on a podcast, whether it's recorded on audio or video, you're naturally speaking. So you don't have to think as much about, how am I going to write this transition between point one and point two? Or, what's my hook going to be? It's a natural conversation. You're going to get a lot of content, and then you can start going in. And if you make blog posts or Substacks or whatever, you can go in and do that later. But you get all this content. And so I think it's for content creators, I think it's huge.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, how do you see kind of automation impacting other lines of business, like outside of podcasting? Do you see just continuous, automation and things like that, or where do you see things going? I mean, you're seeing a lot of different folks from a lot of different areas here, and I imagine AI is kind of always on the radar. But just kind of curious for your take.
Yeah, I do think we're moving into a time where if it can be automated, it will be automated. Then the question becomes, okay, how good is the quality going to be? And that's a different story. I do think as we progress forward with any business, with any startup, with any enterprise, there's going to be a lot more automation, and data is going to be the key of it. It's going to be the core of it. You know, I think we will see a lot more quality improvements as time goes on. Like again, we're 2 years into the public version of this. Of course, GPT has been, OpenAI and ChatGPT has been around for, 5, 6, 7 years. So if you had early access, okay, you've been playing with this for a while. But the public access, 2 years, and then look at the ecosystem of companies that are created around generative AI, around AI, data, around all sorts of things. And this is just 2 years. Give it another 3, 4, 5 years. The quality is going to be outstanding. And so I do think that's kind of one of the trends that we're seeing.
And you mentioned data too. Like, any thoughts around privacy with creators and all this AI, driven data, like insights and things like that? Or are you guys just working with public information, or like, how much are you thinking about that, the privacy side of things?
So I think about it quite a lot. I've worked with a number, if we go back to agency days and some of the fractional CMO work I've done, I've worked with some privacy protocols. I'm a big believer in privacy. I think it's a human right, and I think we all need to have privacy in our lives, including financial privacy, to be able to really live the lives that we want. So I'm a big believer in that, and I love the stuff that Brave has been doing with privacy, and I'm a big believer in that. Here's the challenge. We're at a place right now with companies like OpenAI or other big data companies where they're pulling in as much data as they can get.
Hmm.
Your data is going to be part of that. The question for a creator is now, well, do you want to willingly give that data over to have more convenience and speed? Or do you want to take more time, energy, and effort to build your own type of private, let's call it LLM, large language model, or your own private, agent that you control the data on? And I think that kind of toss up or discussion is going to really be an internal thing for each content creator. Again, my hope is always that we lean more towards privacy because I'm a big believer in it.
Hmm.
But from what I see in the world and from what I see over the last 5, 6 years, 10 years, that's just not what people want. And it's, once you go down that path, it's a little hard to reverse,
Yeah, it sounds like too an opportunity for. I mean, like just to kind of back up to that a little bit. That notion of kind of having your own, your own LLM, right? Like, it seems like also kind of an opportunity within the industry for a challenger to come in and really, or challengers to come in and really kind of put a solution out that allows them to do that, because it seems pretty empowering. Like, and there's got to be some balance in between the two, I would imagine. Just if you look at even social, right? Like where, okay, I publicly post stuff on social all the time, but like my DMs on Twitter aren't public, right? Like and things like that. That could be really empowering. Like I think for creators too, I would imagine. Yeah.
But here's the thing, Luke. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if your DMs are actually private. You need to look at the terms of service with Twitter, or sorry, X, or with Facebook, Meta, or with with WhatsApp. Like Meta owns WhatsApp, and Zuck is like, that guy's one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our generation. I'm willing to bet some money that your messages on WhatsApp are not private. They're not yours. They're
right.
And so like
lots of nuance.
Yeah, there's lots of nuance. And then it's like, okay, if I want to create my own LM, I've got to learn about this. I've got to go down this path. Now, to your point, I think it's a great idea for, a company. Maybe we'll build it one day. A company to say, hey, you can quickly spark up your own LLM, and this is yours to own, yours to create. You maybe pay a fee to like get that set up. That's a super cool idea. How much adoption will it have? And do content creators really care? I don't know. I really don't know.
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, like I think so much of this is like carts and horses, and like, are we actually like kind of communicating what that value is a whole word salad exercise in itself, right? Like, but just from a technology perspective, damn, that would be super cool. Like, totally.
Yeah, that would be really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and just kind of like going a step further too. I mean, you're digital nomad, kind of global entrepreneur, like. How much are you looking at regulatory challenges, or are you even seeing regulatory challenges with the AI space? I mean, I know you've got a crypto background too, and there's no way of avoiding it there. But I mean, that also gives you a unique point of view on this. Like when you're looking at AI too, like how much are you seeing this impacting what you're doing, and how much are you thinking it'll impact things over the next couple of years?
Yeah, great question. So I think, if we're going to relate it to crypto and Web3, you're right. I have seen it. Like, so our agency was the first agency to get a number of crypto clients regulated to advertise in Canada.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we had to work with Google and Meta to actually make that happen. And, there's a bunch of hurdles you had to jump through, et cetera.
Sounds like pain.
It wasn't easy. Let's just put it that way. For those who remember if you've been in the Web3 crypto space since, more of the early days. So if you remember 2 cycles or 3 cycles ago in let's call it 18 to 2021, the wild west, it's still the Wild West, but maybe now it's the Wild West. And back then it was the wild west. Like you could do anything. Right. And it was absolutely nuts. I think we're there with crypto, with AI. Mm-hmm. And right now, there is no regulation around AI, and it's the Wild West. You have companies like OpenAI basically swiping, Scarlett Johansson's voice and using it and saying, yeah, sue us. Like, go ahead. And we'll pay a little bit of money, but it's worth it for us. And so it's like really the Wild West. And hey, yeah, we'll partner up with Apple and we'll siphon in all of your data. Like, okay, there's no regulation around it. I think that will change. I hope that will change. I think that will change. I'm not sure which one, but I do see a real kind of danger with very intelligent AI systems coming out in the next 3 to 5 years. And I don't know if we will have regulation to stop that, help that. I don't know if other countries will go that route, which means, okay, so if you're a startup playing with this, you just put your servers in your company in another country. Like, I don't know what that future looks like. I'm of two minds. One, I hope that there is some type of safety regulation with artificial general intelligence as it fast approaches and as everyone's trying to race towards that. But at the same time, it's nice to be in the Wild West if you've got, like, you know, a gun on your hip and you got a good horse and like you can make quick moves, like you'll be all right. And so I think just keeping that in mind, it's like, if you want to get into it and use it, now is a great opportunity to be early, just like crypto. And down the road, yeah, there may be regulations in specific countries that might hold you back.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I really appreciate you've given us a ton of your time, ton of insight here too. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want our audience to know about?
I think we've covered a lot. You know, like, I just think if you're a content creator, if you're a B2B business owner and you want to build your thought leadership, you want to start building a personal brand, you want to get in front of an audience, definitely check out Echo Jockey and definitely check out Press Jockey if you're still interested in the traditional media side. Like, both tools I built because I was having that problem. And so, I wanted to help other people because I really do think we need more great businesses to really be in the spotlight. And just because you don't have the budget for a big agency, or just because you can't afford to pay for, a massive placement at the Super Bowl or something, doesn't mean that you shouldn't be in the spotlight. You absolutely should. And so you've now got tools that we built to help you do that and help make that happen. So, go out there, get your message out and start to, change the world.
I love it, man. I love it. What a great message to end on too. Where can people find you online, where you're sharing, your thoughts and updates and stuff like that?
Yeah. So I'm going to do a real big push on LinkedIn. So you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm also going to be starting to publish a lot more on X. I've been, in the crypto world, I was pretty quiet just because I wanted to, I've seen some things go down with some connections, like, actually. So I've been pretty quiet in the crypto world, but you can follow me on X at Cahill Camden, and also on LinkedIn. Cahill Camden is my name. So you search me, add me, and I will be posting on both platforms a lot more.
I love it, man. And thank you again for your time, and love to have you back too, to check back in on things and get more insight from you as things go forward too. But thanks so much, Cahill.
Do it. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Happy to do a second session. And Luke, appreciate it.
Likewise, man. Likewise. Have a good one. Thanks for listening to the Brave Technologist podcast. To never miss an episode, make sure you hit follow in your podcast app. If you haven't already made the switch to the Brave browser, you can download it for free today at brave.com and start using Brave Search, which enables you to search the web privately. Brave also shields you from the ads, trackers, and other creepy stuff following you across the web.